Okay, hopefully this is a little better. That was a complete disaster. Um, yeah, are we live? Let me get some feedback in the chat if there's anybody on the stream. Hey, hey, Joe Mama, how are you? Welcome back. Give us 1 second here. I had to restart, so we'll begin in just a moment. Yeah, not sure what happened on that last one. I wasn't sure if it worked, so we'll go with this one. Perfect. How's everybody doing out there? Have you had a chance to check out 2021? All right, so I think we'll get going. Um, yeah, so thanks everybody for joining. I thought it would be pretty fun to walk through the what's new in 2021 and just see if we can figure out all of the settings and the options and take a look at the new tools or features and see how we can apply them to our existing workflows. Uh, yeah, so thanks for joining me. I think this will be a lot of fun, and I'm going to do it completely on the fly, so some things I might not be able to figure out straight away. I've kind of gone through the What's New website that can be found here under the Help What's New in this setting. Now, that will take you to the website for that. So we're just going to go through that. I've kind of scanned it, so I sort of know what's going on, and yeah, we'll go from there. So to begin, Alias 2021 released recently. I'm always excited when the new version comes out. I like to see what they've been up to, kind of guess where they're heading with the software, and yeah, just kind of a game. So I think we'll start with the general improvements. Because I've worked so much in the sub-Ds in the beta release, I'm pretty familiar with what's going on in the sub-D workflows. So we'll be able to, I'll either point into some other videos or we'll just kind of skim through those. The first one that I think is really awesome, and I know what this is referring to. Now when you launch the software, the splash screen has sub-D workflow right on the interface, and here, that helps if I switch over to to the actual document. Let's do both, actually. Yeah, so this is what I'm referring to, the splash screen. And now there's a sub-D workflow. And what that means, and this is where it's really awesome. So let's go ahead and let's just get rid of that for right now. So when you use that, there's now a workflow under your preferences. And just a note, I'm in Surface 2021, so it may look slightly different if you're using Auto Studio or I guess it's Concept now. But under Workflows, you can see Control 5 is the hotkey, and it will take you to a sub-D workflow kind of setup. So for example, I'll just create a cube in the middle and add some shading. And so now background has changed. All of my marking menus are now specific to subdivisional surfaces. So I can have a marking menu that's perfect for NURBS modeling, gives me all the features that I want there. Switch over to the sub-D workflow, and now I have a marking menu that's specific to the sub-Ds. So for example, select face is going to be in the same location as my pick surface. Picking edge is going to be similar to picking curves and things like that. So I've already reorganized mine slightly so that they match between the workflows, and now I can just hit Control 1, switch back to my NURBS setup, marking menus, Control 5, and go to sub D. So that's really cool. That's a great new addition. I'm most likely going to change the hotkey between 1 and 5. I don't use the other workflows. So yeah, that will be very specific to that. And then let's see, does this, I always wonder if it's supposed to control or change the control panel to be a sub D control panel, because I don't notice it changing, but that's, maybe it's just in my setup. I'm not using the default preferences here, but I would expect that when I would click 1, okay, now it goes to the default, and control 5, now we're in the sub D control panel. So you can have completely separate shelves in your control panel for that subdivisional workflow. Really cool. I'm glad they did that. We're going to review some of the new features. I've pulled them over from the defaults for the shelf and talk about those in just a moment. Hopefully we'll touch upon them in the what's new. Don't let me forget that to review those, because that will be important to show what's going on, how they've changed some things. So sub D workflow, that's awesome. Let's switch back. General disclaimer, I'm sure that's super important. We're going to skip right past that. New layout options. You know, I saw this, I kind of thinking about it a little bit. I'm probably not going to take advantage of this. I'm not sure. Maybe, here's my guess. And please, anybody leave a comment if you know for sure what they were thinking with this feature. But the new layout options, typically for layouts, here's the layout, user windows, make current layout default, reset. Hold on, let me just make sure I'm in the long menus. I want to make sure I'm using long menus here. So save current layout, retrieve layout. You know, all this is going to do is basically change your, the layout of your windows, of perspective, side, top, back. At least that's what I'm guessing. I don't change that very often, but where I could see this would be interesting is maybe it's for people that are switching between a single screen and multiple screens. You know, maybe you have your perspective on one monitor, and then on the other monitor you've got your 4 views or something else. You know, maybe, because from what I've seen, it doesn't change the location of your actual windows. It's only the layout. So oh, excuse me. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they've added that one. That's interesting. I would be interested to know what triggered that addition. Now, Alias print improvements. I'm just surprised people print from Alias, to tell you the truth. But it's cool. I mean, yeah, if you can change the line thicknesses. I've used the print function in order to get wireframe out of the software. There's a few different methods to do that. But for example, if you were in surfaces, let's just take something like the impressive cube here, and let's just give this a try. I haven't used the print settings in I don't even know when. You know, and what I used to do is print to PDF, or I think there's an image in here as well. No, just PDF. Vector. Oh, that's cool. Be able to do that. I thought you were able to move this at one point. Here, let me recenter that, see if we can get it to, I'm not sure. It always seems so strange that the print settings were difficult to use inside of a software, but fit to page, freeform, okay, gotcha, that's cool. And yeah, you can switch the color. Oh yeah, look at the thickness. So that seems like it's almost adding the anti-aliasing settings for the wireframe draw, and then allowing you to, is this the color? Is that how you change it? Maybe it's off screen, the windows for that? I don't know. Yeah, because it seems like that would be, colors. I don't know. So yeah, that's cool that you can add the line thickness. If anybody wants to do something like a hidden line, there is another way to do that. One thing I will do is I'll go to anti-aliasing. I'll bump these up to say, like, let's just go thicker. something like that. Go, and you can see now that all those lines are much thicker in that. And if we switch this to hidden line, we can get that right in the window. And I tend to do this, right, when I need wireframe out of the software. And then I just screen grab my software or file, export, current window. And yeah, there's settings in there. So, a couple different ways to go. I don't use the print function. It's cool they added the line thickness. That was probably a freebie just by reconnecting stuff that's already there. Under the modeling, this is so awesome. This is sweet. I love it. Although I haven't really played with it to really understand how far you can push this. But this new history visualizer gives you a node-based history system. And I haven't, maybe we can play with it today. And let me make sure I have this stuff turned off. We'll just go back here. Let me just switch my colors here. Modeling window. This value is typically, like 0.6. I think it's 0.63, roughly. But, that's the normal color. So let's see what we can do here. Oh, that's weird. My shelves are a little messed up. Let me just fix those. You guys will probably like to see this. Oh, they're all messed up. Awesome. So, yeah, if you just drag and drop, edit point, I've shown this before, but yeah, and then we'll just drop these all in there. And now I have a pull down that gives me all of my edit point curves. So, and then I can just Control Alt, drag middle mouse button, and then I'll drop this into this one. Not sure. Maybe when I was playing with the workflow, something saved that switched my shelves, which is not what I was expecting. Oh, that's what it is. Oh, interesting. Going back on the sub-D workflow, it looks like it loads different shelves as well. And I've replaced them, but I must have some differences between the two. Yeah, because here now my drop down is already set up. Huh. I wish you could share different shelves between these workflows. I'm sure some of you guys have the same feeling. I like it really consistent. I want to be able to pick and choose what that workflow change does. Anyway, so let's just go, whoa, too many clicks. Let's just create a couple curves. Yeah, sure, we'll keep them kind of consistent. And then I'll just switch this to here to there and here to here. And I'll try to illustrate one of the recent things I've come across that I would love to be able to do with this. And we'll just fake this with a draft. So we've got a draft surface, and I'm going to delete the history, and we'll just move this point of the draft up, and we'll give this a go. And if this doesn't work, then I'll show you another method. But so let's go to the square tool, and I'm just going to bounding box these curves, something like that. So that's a square, no big deal, right? And so I'm moving it, everything's updating. I'm going to switch my performance options to during transform, and that way when I move the CV, the square automatically updates. But there's times where, I might have, let me just show you kind of a nice for instance here. So, we'll just extend that. I'll add in some more points, great, and then align. And I'll align that. Whoop. Oh, helps if I choose the right one. Okay, so I've got my square, and it's aligned over here, and then I've got my draft. And there's times where I want all of the history to work. And sure, in this example, I could probably just snap that one to replace that. But there's been times where I'll want to use the square, go to the visualizer, and we get this really cool setup, right? And so here's the square formation, then I extended it, and then there's an alignment off the extension. So I get to see all of that network. And then let's say, for example, I'm just clicking on these curves. I want to see which curves were made right here. Curve number 3, let's say I want to replace that. And so I'm right click, curve number 3, and I'm going to select the edge of my draft. And so now, instead of using the curve, the square is being built off of the draft edge. And I didn't break any of the history, anything that was potentially built off of this. I've kept all that information. And so now my draft is driving the square. And there's been times where I really wanted to keep history intact, but I needed to swap out the curve, or maybe I accidentally selected the curve as opposed to the edge of the surface, and this will allow me to replace those things. And then I'm pretty sure if we come in here, let's see if we can click on these things, extend. Oh, I could replace the alignment. Oh, wow, the whole alignment I could replace. And then what about, can I tear these things off? Yeah, Rebuild, suspend selected. Okay, so now I can go in there and individually suspend things, and that alignment is no longer working. That's cool. And then very specifically, I can select it, pick this one, and say resume, and now it updates. So that's cool. You know, you get a real clean way of seeing all of the history of that. I'm blown away by this, and I think here's what my guess is. And you know, maybe at some point, because this is almost like you can build some macros, or you can have these inputs, because they can be replaced, I could see that you could have an automatic setup of a fillet or something that you build often, and just choose a few of the open options, and then it will go through those steps for you automatically. So, I mean, this could lead to some really interesting macro type of moves. I think it's being driven from a lot of the Dynamo work and exposing what's going on under the hood in Dynamo. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's super cool. The potential is amazing. And as some of you guys know, anybody talks to me on a regular basis, I think Autodesk always introduces these functions as they're leading up to a multi-release type of functionality. So we only get glimpses of them when they're first introduced, and then they have a tendency to improve them greatly or add on to them as the releases go. So I think that's where we're at with the history visualizer. Selection sets. I have seen this one before. And this one, I wish I had some better data for this. Let me think offhand. Do I have... Well, let me show you guys something real quick. This is a little off topic, but Adrian Arsht, I don't even know how to spell that, Miami water fountain. Let's see if it comes up. So I built a water fountain in Miami. If you guys are ever there, check it out for sure. It's pretty sweet. Yeah. Well, here's the view of it, right? Let's see if we can just go to the... No, it's tough. Why is that not allowing me just to open the image? Anyway, so this water fountain cuts through a 5-lane road. It's like 144 feet. And all of these ripples, I basically set up selection sets to be able to move those CVs and move them around. It was part of an animation tool. And in order to really control the water flow, I built selection sets. So I could easily pick each of the rows and shift them and move them around. And it was quite sweet the way it worked out. So what they've done is basically added it to the software as a really integrated feature. So let's just turn on some points. And let's see if I can figure this out. I haven't actually used this yet. I thought I saw it over here. Yeah, create under the sub D shelves that they have. So let's say, for example, I wanted these 2 rows, and I'm building like the water fountain, right? And so it's important that I have the ability to reselect these all the time. And so what I can do is I can say create multiple, that's fine, and I'll hit go. And now you can see over in the object lister, I have selection sets set right here. And so if I say select selection sets and I choose it, you can see now that it automatically selected every CV or component level item that I have in my file. And now when I move, I can go back and, let's say I'm moving those, in whatever direction. And then, continue working. I need to get back to that selection set, choose them, and now I've got those reselected again. So it saves as a layer or an item in the object lister, a lister of all the things it needs to pick. So that's really cool, especially if you're kind of keep going back and you have to manipulate the same object or objects over and over again. Maybe in the sub D workflow, you can choose your cage, as your selection sets, and that way you're manipulating, rows of it or some character line. So pretty cool addition. I think it was already in the software. I thought it was under animation, and they've just brought it to the front lines of Alias as a tool. So that's cool. So that's what selection sets do, and that water fountain, if you're ever in Miami. Now when you look at the surface of that, you'll see like I was choosing all these rows of CVs over 144 feet in order to manipulate those. And so, yeah, awesome. That's cool. Reference manager, I'm not a reference manager user. I understand what it does. I have some friends that rely on this a lot. Reference manager can be found here. There we go. And I think the big item here is it supports basically assemblies now. And the way somebody explained this to me, kind of what at least was the reasoning behind it, and I think it's amazing. All right, so I believe it supports folders now. It supports basically your layer structure and your item structure. So imagine you're working in a studio environment, right? And you've got your car, and then inside the car is a node that basically is a door or a front fascia, whatever it is. And then within that folder is another subcategory for body. Maybe there's grill inserts. And then inside of those are another like specific item, tabs, screws, details, whatever it is. And each one of those items, I believe, can be a wire file. And so you can build your now wire files like an assembly file in a solids package and be able to pull those out, work on them specifically, and resave those back to the structure. And all of it is supported the whole way through, which is great because, I just finished a project, and basically when he sent me a file, I would get a folder with all these subfolders that were empty, and then was the folder I was working on. And then when I saved it, it was easy for him to import it, and it basically placed it into the master file. But he had to maintain a full master file of data, whereas this will allow you to have a master file that's only pointer files to the individual wire files. And then each of us could be working on our own item, resave it, just save it, and then it updates the master file automatically. So I think that's where this is going to work. I haven't used it myself, but the reference manager is pretty cool. And another detail, if you haven't used the reference manager, is it will tessellate all of your wireframe data and shading and all of that stuff. It pre-tessellates it, at least it used to. I think it works the same. And so when you load a wire file, and you want to load it into your software, because it's already pre-tessellated, it's lightning fast to bring it in and out because there's no conversion. It's like it's like pre-calculated. And so you get a lot of benefits by working, especially in big data sets, big organizations, and big groups. Reference Manager is awesome, and it's really cool that it now supports kind of this assembly workflow. So we probably could watch the video and react to that. But Universal Transform Tool Enhancements. This is cool. Does anybody use Maya or I think Modo? Probably Max. Just curious. Go ahead and throw in the comments if you do. And we're going to use a super impressive, no, actually, let's go ahead and just use our cube. So any Maya users online right now? And I'm going to switch my interface to toggle single hotkeys. And so here's what's cool about the way they've implemented this. And I'm going to switch my control panel to my subdiv panel. And I don't know if these are part of the default tools in Alias or I switched them to my subdiv, so I don't know. But if you look over here in the transform, I've kind of broke this up: transform tools, display tools, and navigation. Alias now ships with these custom tool or icons with single hotkeys assigned to them. And what's new here is there's always been this, let's see, transform tool. So for example, if I make like, I don't know, sphere. See this manipulator, right? I can click right on it and move things around and blah, blah, blah. And prior to 2021, this only worked on the object level, right? Items that could have a node inside of the object lister. That's how you can always think of the object level. But it never worked on the component level, on the hulls, the CVs, the edges, the faces, surfaces, all that stuff. Component level items it did not work on. So you always had to choose an object. If you had a cube, you couldn't just pick one face. You had to pick them all, right? And so what's new is now they've enabled this tool. So under the transform, all these options, global and pivot, we'll get to those in a second. These now work on the component level. So instead of picking the whole sphere, I can pick one point, and I'm hitting the Q key. You can see Q is assigned here. And so now it brings that manipulator up, and so I can move things around on the component level. And so I'm hitting W for transform, E for rotate, R for scale, right? And so this is very similar to other mainly polymodeling packages that use this type of paradigm, and they come pre-assigned to a hotkey that's based on the single hotkey stuff. So, so that's pretty cool. So if you're, let me just select the edge over here, and I just want to move that edge. I can have an on-screen manipulator to be able to do that and select all my edges. And then let's see if they have this enabled. Okay, I think that's working. So what these planes are in this space is like your work plane. And if I click on the plane, it's only allowing this to move in this case, X and Z. If I click on this plane, it will only be green being Y, RGB, X, Y, Z. So green is Y, blue is Z. So this only allows it to move on the YZ plane. So that's pretty cool that you get this on-screen manipulator. You don't have to switch between, marking menus, move, transform, or scale, rotate, and all of that stuff. And then I believe, yeah, you can adjust it. Okay, gotcha. So you can adjust the manipulator and then transform. So now I'm moving it from there. I'm imagining snap works off of the transform, which is cool. And then one little caveat that's slightly different, I believe, is the global and pivot mode. So if you use pivot, it's going to use the object's pivot point to place the manipulator. So if you're on a big object and everything's pivot, or all the pivots are at 0 at the origin, yeah, that's where your manipulator will end up. So global is kind of, I think it averages all the screen space, basically a center of everything you have selected. And so if I add to the selection, if I add to the selection, the manipulator will move. So there's that one. Yeah, so I started adding manipulator moves. If it was set to pivot, the manipulator is not going to move. So pretty cool. It's cool they added that, or at least enabled it to work on the component level. Subdivision modeling, oh, so much good stuff here. I'm not sure if they go through, in this video, go through all of the options. Let's see what they changed, or how they're... Okay. Yeah, we can do this. The retopology, I'm going to link, don't know, one of these corners, and you can check out the video I did that goes into it pretty extensively. And then let's subdiv align to curve tool. Yeah, this is cool. I think I understand how to use it. So let's just build something. All right, yeah, that looks cool. And all right, so here's how I imagine this tool is working. And I'll just move these around. Okay, so under here, and we'll go to the align to curve. So what's new in 2021, and by the way, see how long this menu is? If you just click this little arrow up and down, shrinks everything down. Nice. And I believe a lot of this is new, as far as uniform versus closest, parametric versus arc length. My daughter just came in. I'm online, please.
Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
Baby Dad.
I'll be right there in a minute. Sorry, guys.
And Daddy Dad. And Dad and Mom.
Okay. I'll see you in just a little bit.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Awesome. So, yeah, so we will, let's see, pick my sub D, degree 2 uniform. Oh, pick the points. And then we will align to curve. And then I'll choose this one. And here you can see, we'll go through the options. Align to curve, you can see the projection type is uniform, so the spacing is equal along this curve. And I'm imagining, yeah, look at that. You can adjust the range, which is down here, pull this in, but the spacing will automatically stay equal. Now, if we do parametric, because I'm aligning to a curve that basically has a 2-degree curve with the CV only on the one side, I think this is live too. Yeah, cool. So you can see the spacing is a little tighter on the one side, and then it opens up as it flows along that curve. And I just hit query edit along that edge, and it picked it up. So that's pretty cool. And then closest is doing very similar, but instead of projecting along the entire curve, it just looks at the edge, measures out to the curve that you're projecting to or aligning to, and places it closest point to that. And then arc, doesn't look like you actually have that. So but that's still pretty cool. So yeah, closest just will automatically snap to those points and go from there. So that's nice that they have all those options now to really control, how those work. And what I like to do, and let's just fake the funk on this, and we'll just use our CV tool, our move. I still don't understand exactly how they're planning on pulling this off. Yeah, I want to be able to add points down these loops, but yeah, so that's pretty close. And then we'll just mess these up a little bit. Great, there we go. So what I want to do, and how I use this tool, is I'm going to select these points, align the curve. I'm going to say generate a curve and 2 degrees, and we'll keep it uniform. That's awesome. Generate curve. And so now when I'm building, if I mess up a nice character line or something that's flowing really great, I can just generate this curve. There it is. And now I have the ability in all my views to set that curve that everything's going to flow along, and it will snap to that. And so because I have it set to uniform and closest, it just generates the curve. And whoops, not uniform, closest I have it set to. And then, yeah, good to go. So that's pretty cool. This tool is going to be very useful for cleanup and to really tighten up your models. So yeah, this projection type. Extrusion, subdivision extrusion options. Let's see, what does it say about that? These additions. Oh yeah, there's some of the rebuilding that can happen. Curves and surfaces. All right, so check this out. Under extrude, if we switch this to edges, right? I'm extruding the sub D edge. Something like that, right? That's pretty good. But if I switch this to curves and surfaces, I believe, I thought I could do this off of this piece, curve and surfaces. Oh yeah, there we go. So I'm selecting, instead of selecting the cage of the sub D, I'm only selecting the NURBS. And now you can see that it builds a whole new sub D off of that. So this could be a NURB surface, like a regular NURB surface, not part of the sub D limit surfaces. And then it will set my division. And yeah, whatever I want, parametric, uniform. Ooh, uniform does not look, oh, that's part of the bias. Oh, that's cool. Clean it up like that. All right. So yeah, so it allows you to choose those items as opposed to just the cage, which I think was the limitation before. So if we're in top view, and I'll just build a quick NURB surface, and let's say this is the edge of your patch, and I want to start using sub Ds to come off of this patch. I can select that NURBS, and now it's building a sub D patch off of the NURBS edge, which is really cool, because now I can concept model with sub Ds and have it match my NURBS surface. So that's pretty cool. That's a nice addition to that. NURBS modeling improvements. This one's cool. Or actually, this one is, I've needed something like this before. Let's go ahead and clean up our garbage here, and yeah, let's just build something. Not that. All that is I have my degree set to 2, so let's, whoa, not that. 3, 1, cool. And there, and we'll just kind of recreate what they have. Let's square it up a little bit. Okay. So we'll just take a draft, and we'll draft these guys out at the same time. Draft angle, yep. Cool. And freeform blend. And we'll go to positional first. Modify parameter. Wow, crown. I see. Oh, no way. Oh, that's awesome. Can you do that with position? Okay, do you guys see what's going on here? So it allowed me to align to the edge, right? But often, if you're doing scan data and you have a theoretical, you're modeling to your theoretical. Oh my God, I didn't even know this was part of this. This is awesome. So you're modeling to your theoretical, and you want to do a freeform blend off of there. So theoretical. Now you can use this parameter to move it. Can I move that separately? Oh, man. So if I had, let's just extend this so it's very clear what I'm showing here. Let's get rid of that. Let's just try this. And I'm going to align position. Whoa, I had no clue this was in the software. We'll do a freeform blend. Okay, build, sure. It's probably freaking out because there's no space. Oh, look at that. All right, so here's where this is handy. Oh my gosh, cool. I'm sorry if I'm getting excited about something that's kind of dumb. So, you know, you're built to theoretical. You're trying to match a shoulder or some sort of shape, maybe on the front fender, coming up into the hood. And now you can basically just align internal to this and match that surface and be able to play with all the shape controls. Yeah, that probably works too. Tighten it up, loosen it up. That's cool. That's really cool. I believe IsomSurf had something like this from forever ago, and you could align internal to a an edge and basically extend it. In Alias, we always had to do like a bunch of crazy moves to kind of get this interaction. So the fact that we can now just drag that along that parameter interactively, trying to match a certain shape, that's awesome. That is cool. So here we have your normal curvature, and that comb immediately roller coasters down to come to a flat surface. But if we switch this to G2 curvature arc, watch what it does. So it gives us our roll off, or the lead into this, but it tries to maintain this radius much longer. So it gives you, and I believe, oh yeah, look at that. There's those spans, right? And so it gives you, yeah, that shape. It kind of gives you that tangent type of shape, but then gives you curvature on the way that it comes in and out. So there's a way to, well, here, we'll just measure the radius. Yeah, that number, see how that number is basically 148 for much longer? This whole section is basically holding that radius and then blends out. So now this arc-based curvature is giving you, yeah, it's like a tangent fillet, but with curvature amount of lead in. So that's pretty cool. And I'm only speculating here on why it, why it works this way or why it's important. But I think for flat surfaces and when you're trying to get that product design, consumer products, that's the reason this tool exists and what it's for. So very cool. But all you single span guys, too bad. I don't think, yeah, well, you give some and take some, I guess. So that's cool. That's what the surface fillet options here. I had seen that and blew my mind. That's really cool. The parameters, we just went through that. That's neat. Cool. So let's have a look at. Oh yeah. Oh, I glanced at the chat. Hey Bob, yeah, ISD tools. I know you would be very familiar with those types of functions. Is it true that's kind of coming from the ISOM world? Oh, there's a bug. Oh man, I didn't know that. I'm talking to Joe Mama. So let's figure this out. The chain select, pick chain. Something new in here. Do you guys use the pick chain? It's been in there for a while. I'm not super familiar with all of the functions. Let me just trim convert that and go to 1. Whoops. Oh, I hate that that's revert. I always want it to be update. And the reason I did that is because now I can take that and I want to have one piece that's broken right there. So it looks like what's new, and let me just review this real quick. Pick chain, pick mask. Yeah, so if you had some curves along here, it won't select the curves. So anything that's position and anything, and when I switch this to tangent, okay, cool. So now anything that's continuous tangent as a minimum, it's going to select those patches automatically, and otherwise it will, if it was just position, since all of these are positional, then it selects everything. And what it looks like is if I have a combination of curves and surfaces, I can filter out which one it does. So I don't use this as much. Sometimes after I am done clicking 50,000 times trying to assign a material to an object, I'm like, oh, why don't I just use the pick chain? And yeah, so if you switch it to tangent, it does a really good job. Clear. Oh, it helps if I switch it to surfaces. Yeah, so now, now I could come in here and, why do I keep doing that? I'm pre-programmed to use my marking menus. So here's where I want it, though. That's too bad. I want it to, curve chain is new. Oh, to do curves is new, Bob is saying. Awesome. And so what that would be, refers to, is if we have, just create that. And so just split it up a couple times. And so you're saying the curves all together, so if we select one, it will select them all. That's awesome. That's cool. For assigning materials, I wish these chain selects were inside of the assign shader. Maybe they can, maybe somebody's listening. Hint, hint. That would be useful for me at least. Extend tool. This one, I've got to play with this. Like, sometimes I wish I don't wing these things. I'm completely winging it. So let's just, and I think I understand. I know I read the description of this and I immediately understood what and why. I'm just kind of making something that's has some shape. So I use extend a lot. I even have two icons, and usually, here's a tip. Anybody that's not fully versed in extend. If you extrapolate, having merge on, totally cool. Right? Oh, check that out. So this might illustrate it pretty good because I did get it to mess up. But see how I'm extending from the middle and it's not quite giving me the result that I want? We'll swing back to that in just a second. If you ever use linear, you have to turn merge off, at least if you're working on my team. Because if you just extend linear, which does exactly, just takes the last row and extends it out, right? We can go from either side. But if you don't extend linear, or if you don't have turn merge off, here's what happens. And this can cause a world of hurt. So I have merge turned on with linear, click it. Oh, that's new. Oh, I have okay, that's not new. I have my isoparms turned off. Because usually I'm single surface, single span guy. But here, it just looks like an isoparm. But if we use query edit and I click on it, non-empty spans, right there, that's a multi-knot. That will give you crazy problems. And coming from other applications, it's fine, but multi-knots do a bunch of really gnarly things to your surface, and they don't work very well in Alias. Now, if you're going in CATIA and CATIA's doing all their thing, they have multi-knots like mad, but their tools kind of work well with that. So Alias, not so much. So if you use linear, Always turn merge off. And then along edge, whoops, here, let's delete that. I want to do extrapolate, merge off. And we'll just pull this out, see what happens. Okay, and now I'm going to do this along edge. Did I hit go? Yeah. And so now, wait, I thought I had, oh, I see. Merge isn't even an option. Huh. Well, there we go. Let's just see what we can do here. What I believe it does is it tries, it's calculating, it calculates the merge different in that section where you have all this kind of stuff happening. I wonder if anybody on here really knows what it is. Yeah, then I template a lot. Thanks, Bob. I template all the time. To ensure the edges maintain true straightness along the edge after multiple unequal extend operations, because will start to twist and do all sorts of crazy things. So this is definitely an improvement for that. I'm a little surprised that these must be very similar in their nature. So yeah, see how that twist, and then if I go to along edge, now we still get it. So I'll have to play with that one. That one's going to be an interesting. Ball corner, we won't get into that. It locks the fourth ratio. Oh, the start and the ends are the same between those. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Visualization, replace shader by name. You know, that's probably coming from VRED type stuff. I don't use those options at all. Super sampling and anti-aliasing. We talked a little bit about anti-aliasing with the wireframe when we started. Here, super sampling turned off. I think it's a performance enhancement, so that's great. This is cool. I understand the use of this one, so we will go here and just create a plane. I don't know, I'm like picking around here, and yeah, let's just do this. Whoops, next plane, slice, set construction plane. And so now what I think you can do is dynamic section always had this really cool visual clipping plane like that. And persistent visual clip. Oh, you can't. Is that only on for the sections? Okay, gotcha. All right. So for persistent, instead of having based on here, I can choose the plane. And oh yeah, it does work for clipping as well. That's cool. It's based on that. So I've chosen that plane, and now it's clipping based on the plane, and it will give me all of my sections from there, number of planes, things like that. So that's really cool, that addition. So it's not, yeah, it just makes it very useful for picking those sections or clipping, which is really neat. So create a plane, and then you can select that to modify. Box mode for sub-Ds only. So that's, yeah, so if we have this, and I have a regular sphere, and we come over here in box mode, let's open up the options. I just double clicked. Oh, whoop, don't want that. And so I believe box mode, and it doesn't, it's not trying to box mode your NURBS data. Whereas if I do use the NURBS, even though this is a NURBS, now it's showing me basically the shading of the hulls and the CVs. But that's kind of, well, it could be cool if you had a lot of patches, it would be a little confusing. But I could see that as maybe a easy way to see if your hulls are straight in that, but sub-Ds only help you to control that when you have hybrid modeling with NURBS and polys. So that's awesome. I like that one. Data transfer. Added T-spline support to the sub-D export. So if I'm going to, what is it, Speedform, and I think some of the other Autodesk applications have T-splines integrated. I know Speedform is, but if we have export active as sub-D, so OBJ is typically how we export if we're going to Maya or Max or Modo or whatever it is. OBJ would be your best option, and that exports just the cage, right? The non-smooth version without the NURBS. And then if you go to T-spline, it does whatever it does with those T-splines. So that's nice to be able to get to, I think, Speedform specifically, and maybe some of the other Autodesk packages. So that's cool. Import improvements. Yeah, last directory. That's good. Data import. Wow. Yeah. Just some update versions. CATIA V5. Always fun. Dynamo for Alias. I haven't played with this, but this sample file is sweet. Anybody in the automotive should check this out. So if we go to Autodesk Dynamo sample files, we've added a script. Let's see if we can pull that up. Let's figure it out real quick, or at least try, because I haven't done this myself. So there's Dynamo. What was the path? I'm just gonna select that. Here. Sorry, I'm on another screen here doing this, so let's see, Autodesk, Alias, Auto Studio. I wonder if this is only in Auto Studio sample files. Oh, here we go. Sub-D wheel arch. Oh yeah, there we go. So look at this. Open, delete. All right, so here's what we've got. So here's a sub-D import. Here's some curves. And I believe you just pick the curve, if I'm not mistaken. No? Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know why that was so slow. Let's turn off that. So basically what it is they've sending a rig out, and the rig allows you to make all of these adjustments. So for example, if I change, let's see, move this point to define the wheel arch radius and angle. Oh, cool. So smaller wheels, larger. That's neat. So this will be changing the wheel, will change the wheelbase. And so you can match your car that you have set up, build it all here with this rig, and then move this point in Z to define the width of the wheel arch. Oh, okay, so that's the flat. That's cool. And then change the degree of this control to, so here it's the divisions. So let's see, if I switch that to 1, now we have just, that's awesome, right? So you're modifying the curves, and that will change the division of the resulting sub-D that it's building. So if we switch that to 5th degree, now it's 5 divisions. That's pretty cool. Change this degree to radial faces. So like, does that mean, oh, okay, so we can refine it that way. So that's cool. So now even 5, we get 1, 2, 3. Oh, we're only 4 because we're not doing the top one. But that's great. So, you know, this shortcuts a lot of the setup that you have on your normal car. In a normal car, you build the wheel flat first in sub-Ds, place those where you need them, and then bridge between the two. And that takes care of all of that. Oh, and then change the degree here, and that's probably going to do the the divisions of the bridge. So this is the power of Dynamo, and I think this is kind of what this history visualizer is going to be used for, right? So we have the inputs, and then it outputs something. And so I think we're working to the point where we can have these macro kind of scripts and setups and have things automatically built for us on the fly, and then you manipulate, parameters and have it update the model. That's really cool for, to shortcut a lot of this stuff. And let's see if you can... Oh, yeah, okay. So once I change that, then it's going to break the history from that, but it's still a sub D, so that's no problem. So that's pretty cool. Couple problems I see. Let's see. Can you add attitude? No, you can't. Okay. I'd like to have this wheel arches, be able to tip them a little bit. But still, it shows the power. That's really cool. I'm glad they're sending those sample files out. Dynamo is fantastic. Anybody using Dynamo? Antonio, take care, buddy. Visual clipping. Oh, that's an Alias concept. What's where. All right. So that's cool. That took us through the 21. It's pretty good. The way that Autodesk has set up their subscription model, I never upgraded all the time. And that's probably why they did it, so that it forces people like me to upgrade. But, it's sometimes tough to justify the cost of the software. Unless you're in automotive or you're working for an automotive company, it's a pretty hefty subscription fee to have access to these tools. And, there's some really good tools here. I like a lot of them. I see where things are heading. Of course, I wish there was more, but with 2021, traditionally we've seen like 3 dot releases per year cycle, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the next few dot releases. What do you guys think? Do you like the 2021 release? What is your favorite tool that we explored? I think for mine, the workflow, the sub-D workflow is a great addition, especially if you plan on using the sub-D tools. Most of you know that the Read Topo tool is my favorite tool. That's being able to, use a mesh as a reference and sub-Ds on top. I think the history visualizer is really promising. I love that we may enter into that world. Especially working on big teams, I want to build macros. Like if I'm in an interior group and I have knee impact requirements with certain settings for my fillets, I want to be able to save those as a macro and just say knee impact fillet. Does it all, because most of those things are defined. And whether you're working on a hard plastic item or maybe a soft top pad or some sort of soft interior part, a lot of those requirements are kind of baked into the fillets. And I usually have a piece of paper with all of those requirements. So, whether it's leather wrapped or a composite or injected hard plastic, most of those fillets, you kind of know the parameters that work and what your minimum radius sizes are. And I would love to have macros for that. So, maybe some of that history visualizer, I can just have my setup, and then you're almost just you're applying those to 2 new surface conditions and have it rebuild automatically, kind of taking the metadata that's already there. So, there's some cool stuff there. A lot of little tweaks here and there, and stuff that I probably won't use very much. Oh, and then the modeling. Sorry, jumping around. The freeform surface, the parameter to align internal to that surface. That's cool, especially if you're reverse engineering. I could see that as a huge improvement in workflow. Being able to work to the theoretical, leave the theoretical, and then blend internally. Before we had to do all sorts of really funky stuff to get it to work, at least as free flow. So let me have a look at some of these of your questions here. If you have any questions, post them into the comments. I'll try to get to those. Autocar in 10 picks. Yeah. Awesome, Bob. See you, buddy. We got to talk soon. What is your favorite workflow to take surfaces from sub D to class A single span? Woo. Well, I'm not sure. That would be, class A, again, or my definition of class A is just basically you're meeting all of the engineering requirements for the surfaces. And that can mean very different things for different use cases. In automotive, typically that is single span. Class A has all of the CVs flowing from one patch to the next. Maybe it's natural boundaries as opposed to trimmed edges. Those could be possible. Now with a sub D, we are getting, let me switch over. We do get, some of that. If we, let's see I'll just make a plane. Oh, by the way, I just hit the F key, and if you look over here in my menu and you go to display options, I forgot to talk about this. I mentioned it earlier, nobody reminded me. If I hit 1, it's box shading. If I hit 2, it's wireframe. If I hit 3, it's toggle shading. Here, let me actually pull these points up so we can see some of the differences here. All right, so 1 is our box shading, 2 wireframe, 3 toggle shade. You can see that here. And then 4 points on, 5 points off. And I believe that's coming directly from Maya, the way it's set up. So that's cool. And then navigation, you have the ability to set your Alias or Maya navigation tools. And I would imagine, let's see, clutch keys, yeah. So preferences, interface clutch key editor. So that's changing. And then in Maya, if you hit the F key, which is frame, which is similar to the Alias look at. So if I just hit F, it frames the object. And we'll turn our points back on. And so here's our sub D, and we'll go from sub D, surface from sub D, surface from mesh. Oh yeah. Okay, surface from sub D. Go, keep originals, and then we'll just move it. So now it is a sub D into the NURBS, right? It is single span, as far as I know. Yeah, and curvature between each patch. Now, if you get some crazy shapes in your sub D, some of these patches might end up very heavy and dense, but they always will be curvature, unless you've creased it. Of course, that would be positional. And they're always going to be single span. So if the shape meets your requirements for whatever you're outputting, then I guess you could call it Class A. It just certainly will not be a classic definition of Class A from an automotive standpoint. But one thing I was toying with is carbon fiber bike frames. I was kind of searching for those ideas, those products that lend themselves to building it in sub D, but that you could go directly to production. And because the sub D is a NURBS limit surface, right, we could get really organic shapes, free form, much like a carbon bike frame. But then where it interfaces with like the head tube, and you've got your inserts for bearings and things, same with, I think it's called the dropout, where your crank goes through and the insets there. Those could be, very precise NURBS models and geometry. Maybe it's even coming from SolidWorks or from CATIA or Inventor or wherever. And you basically can intersect that with the sub D body and get your precise engineered kind of bits with the sub Ds. So in that scenario, having this perfectly laid out CV pattern for your bike frame is probably ridiculous. I'm sure a lot of those files coming out of engineering looks horrendous, to tell you the truth. And, maybe they're hand finishing in the molds. And there's no reason that you couldn't do that type of stuff and output directly to production, all in Alias with sub Ds, because you're able to do that hybrid. Now, comparing that to workflows where you might have the sub Ds coming from Modo or Maya, they're polygons, right? They're going to be tessellated. They are finite in the tessellation. There's a point where you won't notice it, but it is polygonal. And so making a measurement, a detail measurement off there, or a set fillet size, or even it just doesn't really work with polygons in the same way that NURBS does. So yeah, that could be very specific to the product you're trying to export sub Ds to NURBS. That's a great question, though. That's really, it is going to be interesting to see how far people push this. And I'm sure, for concept models in automotive and knocking them out, when you look at some of the stuff like Mazda's doing, where they have like the stretchy gum type of forms, I don't know how to explain it, but Mazda has really pushed a lot of the fender shapes. Hyundai, some of their latest concepts are just, I've heard they're building those out of single surfaces, which is pretty cool. But you could do that stuff in sub D, and because you're hand finishing them, maybe you just do the whole project in sub D. Fillets, part lines are all NURBS, your traditional tools, part line tools. But in that world, why take the time to do surfacing if you've nailed the reflections in the sub D model? So, yeah. Cool. What happens if you snap to a CV in the transform tool? I'm going back through. Joe Mama, I don't know if you're on this. Snap to a CV. Yes. Well, I'm snapping one